A regular afternoon at a busy convenience store. A black woman, dressed simply, walks in. Calm. Quiet. But the moment she reaches the counter, an employee signals the manager. He storms over, eyes locked on her right hand, missing 3 fingers. "What are you hiding under your sleeve?" She answers softly, "Nothing at all." He snaps, "I saw it, you're stealing. Call security." The store falls silent. All eyes on her. She doesn't panic. She doesn't flinch. Just looks him dead in the eye. "You don't know who I am. And when you find out, you won't believe it." The story begins on a regular weekday afternoon, in a downtown convenience store just off a busy street. Outside, traffic flows steadily, people pass by without glancing in. But inside the store, the atmosphere is different, tense in ways that can't be measured, only felt. This isn't the first time something has gone missing here. Over the years, candy bars, energy drinks, small electronics have disappeared from the shelves. The staff have grown wary. But their caution doesn't fall evenly on every customer. It sharpens when someone walks in with dark skin. Today, a black woman pushes open the glass door. The bell above chimes gently. No one greets her. No one smiles. She wears a faded jacket, plain black pants, and sneakers that have seen better days. Her hair is pulled back, her expression unreadable. She doesn't make eye contact. She doesn't need to, she knows how this works. As she enters, a young employee near the snack aisle stiffens. He doesn't say anything, just watches. The woman walks slowly, deliberately, each step light but firm. She isn't in a rush. She doesn't pretend to be invisible. But she doesn't demand to be seen either. Her right hand swings gently at her side, partly hidden by the sleeve. It's not until she reaches out to adjust a bottle on the shelf that the detail becomes clear. 3 fingers are gone. Clean. Surgical. Healed, but unmistakable. It's the kind of thing most people would try to hide. She doesn't. Behind the counter, the store manager narrows his eyes. He's seen people like her before, or so he believes. He leans toward the cashier and mumbles something under his breath. The cashier glances back, nods almost imperceptibly. The woman continues browsing. Her eyes scan the shelves carefully. Not like someone who's unsure of what she wants, but like someone trained to notice details. She picks up a single bottle of water. Turns it around. Checks the seal. Places it gently in her left hand. From across the room, another customer notices her hand and whispers to a friend. They both look over, pretending to talk about something else. One of them chuckles under their breath. The black woman says nothing. Doesn't react. She's heard worse. Felt worse. She keeps walking, slowly making her way toward the register. Every movement is deliberate, every breath measured. A small child tugs at their mother's coat and points at her hand. The mother quickly pulls the child close and whispers, "Don't stare." But the damage is done. The woman hears. She always hears. As she nears the front, the air seems to change. Subtle, but sharp. The judgment isn't loud, but it's everywhere, thick in the silence, etched into every sideways glance. She isn't stealing. She hasn't said a word. All she's done is walk, choose a bottle of water, and head to the counter. But in this space, with this skin, that's already enough to raise suspicion. She stands in line now. The bottle in her hand. The eyes still watching. And no one, not the staff, not the customers, not even the manager, has any idea who she really is. Not yet. She's still walking the aisles. Her steps soft, deliberate. Not slow, not hesitant. Just, quiet. She doesn't touch anything she doesn't intend to buy. The bottle of water remains in her left hand. The fingers of her right, or what's left of them, curl slightly beneath her sleeve. From the front counter, a young employee leans closer to the manager. His voice is hushed, but the words carry weight. Look at how she moves, suspicious. He doesn't have proof. No product hidden, no alarm triggered. But that doesn't stop the judgment from forming. It's not about what she's done. It's about how she looks. How she walks. How she holds herself, too calm, too quiet to be trusted. The manager doesn't ask questions. He doesn't look for evidence. He simply nods. Then he reaches toward the camera console and taps a few buttons. In the corner of the screen, her face comes into focus. Another angle shows her side profile. A third points toward her back. 3 cameras now trained on one woman. 1 bottle of water. 1 missing hand. She doesn't know she's being watched. Or maybe she does, and just chooses not to care. She keeps walking, turning briefly into the snack aisle before heading toward the front. She doesn't linger. She doesn't pace. Her presence remains steady. Near the gum rack, 2 customers chat idly. One of them, a white man in his 40s, glances toward her, then scoffs. She doesn't look like she can afford anything, he mutters, not bothering to lower his voice. The woman hears him. She always hears. Comments like that aren't new. They've followed her into elevators, across parking lots, through job interviews. They're never direct, never loud, but always sharp enough to cut. And yet, she doesn't react. Her shoulders don't tense. Her steps don't falter. She stays composed. Unshaken. There is a strength in her silence. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that demands respect. Quiet strength. The type built from pain, carried through years. She's learned how to hold herself in rooms like this, how to exist without shrinking. She finally reaches the front. Just a few feet from the counter now. She pauses, sensing the weight of the eyes behind her. The tension in the room thickens, almost visible now. But she doesn't shrink. She lifts her chin, slowly. Her gaze turns toward the manager. Straight into his eyes. No fear. No apology. Then to the customer who made the remark. A long, calm stare. No words needed. The man looks away first. And then, to the young employee who started it all, the one still pretending to be busy behind the counter. She doesn't glare. She doesn't scowl. She just looks. A look that says, I've heard it all before. You're not the first. You won't be the last. She turns her head back toward the counter and steps forward. The bottle of water still in her hand. Her silence heavier than any outburst. She reaches the counter, bottle of water in hand. The store is quieter now, though not empty. A few customers linger near the shelves, pretending to browse. But their eyes are no longer on the items, they're on her. On what's about to happen. She doesn't seem to notice. Or maybe she's used to it. She sets the bottle down gently, then pulls out a worn wallet. Her fingers move slowly, carefully. Not from fear, but from habit, a habit shaped by years of knowing that one wrong move could change the story others tell about her. She slides a bank card into the reader. The screen lights up for a second. Then flashes red. Invalid card. She looks down, calmly. No sigh, no frown. Just quiet observation. She knows cards fail sometimes. She's seen it happen to people in line ahead of her. They laugh it off. Try again. Move on. She pulls out another card. Newer. Clean edges. She offers it to the clerk with a slight nod. He takes it without a word. Swipes once. Nothing. Swipes again. Still nothing. No beep. No prompt. No explanation. He sets the card back on the counter, expression flat. It's not working either. She tilts her head, a gentle question behind her eyes. Could you try one more time? But he doesn't. He steps back. Crosses his arms. His voice shifts, colder now. It's not the machine. The card's no good. She pauses. Not in confusion, but in thought. The card has worked elsewhere. The bank account is active. But she knows, deep down, this moment was never about the card. Before she can respond, she hears footsteps behind her. Slow. Heavy. The kind that fill the air before a word is spoken. The manager steps forward, positioning himself between her and the entrance. He doesn't speak right away. He looks at her, up and down, then at the bottle on the counter. His eyes narrow. You're trying to leave without paying, aren't you? He says it with confidence. Not because he knows. But because he believes. She straightens slightly, eyes still calm. Her voice is quiet, steady. I already paid. But the words don't matter. Not to him. Not to the clerk. Maybe not to anyone else in the store. They don't ask for a receipt. They don't check the system. They don't offer another explanation. All they see is a black woman with missing fingers, a declined card, and a story they've already finished writing. The space around her tightens. One customer edges closer to the exit. Another shifts their basket to the side and starts filming with a phone half hidden under a sleeve. She doesn't turn. Doesn't panic. She stands where she is. Not because she's frozen. But because she refuses to shrink. She won't beg to be believed. Her silence speaks louder than any excuse. She's been here before. Different store. Different faces. Same story. And still, they have no idea who she is. Not yet. The tension thickens like fog. The manager's jaw tightens as he watches her stand there, calm, composed, bottle of water still resting on the counter. He wants control, and he wants it now. Without lowering his voice, without even attempting civility, he steps closer and says, "Open your bag." It isn't a request. It's an order wrapped in assumption. She doesn't back away. Doesn't plead. Her fingers hold the strap of her bag firmly, protectively. Her eyes meet his without fear, her voice low and even. There's no reason. I've done nothing wrong. You don't have the right to search me. Her words are steady. Measured. They should be enough. But they only seem to agitate him more. The manager scoffs, loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. His voice rises, each word thrown like a stone. She's hiding merchandise. It's not about evidence. It's about volume. Accusation shouted in public is often louder than the truth whispered in defense. Around them, heads turn. The quiet background hum of the store fades. A mother clutching a basket pulls her child a little closer. A young couple stops mid-conversation, watching from the drink aisle. From near the snacks, someone mutters, "Figures, colored skin." It's said under the breath, but loud enough to land. Whispers spread fast. Suspicion becomes assumption. In this moment, she's no longer a customer. She's a target. Still, the woman doesn't raise her voice. Doesn't step back. Her body stays still, her hands calm, her breath steady. But her grip on the bag tightens, not out of fear, but out of principle. Her silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. But restraint is met with force. From the front of the store, the security guard storms over. His movements are quick, heavy, decisive, the kind that doesn't allow time for questions. He doesn't speak. Doesn't ask. He simply reaches for her. She instinctively pulls back, but her hand, the one missing 3 fingers, can't hold the strap tight enough. With a sharp tug, the bag slips away. It crashes to the floor, the zipper popping open from the impact. Items spill across the white tile. A pack of tissues. A pen. A set of worn keys. Then something else slides out. A photograph. A little girl, beaming with joy, missing her 2 front teeth, stands proudly in front of a school sign. She's holding a crayon-colored poster that reads, "First day of grade 1." The photo stops near the register. People glance, but their eyes don't linger, not until the second item catches the light. A plastic badge, stiff and official, lands beside the photo. Its edges are sharp, the lettering bold. Regional Head of Security, ID No 07642. The silence that follows isn't awkward. It's weighty. Dense. Like the store itself is holding its breath. The customers look at each other, unsure. The manager, frozen in place, stares at the badge without speaking. The security guard, still standing near the bag, lets his hand fall slowly to his side. The assumptions they carried, loud and unshaken just seconds ago, begin to shift. The certainty, the confidence, the judgment, all of it begins to unravel. No one says a word. But the question now hangs in the air, unspoken yet loud: who is this woman they just accused? And what did they just reveal about themselves? She kneels slowly, without a word. Her movements are gentle, almost too quiet for the moment. But her silence isn't weakness, it's control. The kind that doesn't waver, even when the room demands her to break. One by one, she gathers the fallen items. The keys. The photo. The badge. She picks up the picture of the little girl with both hands, brushing away a smudge on the edge. Her fingers, or what remains of them, move with care. This is not the first time she's had to pick herself up in front of people who doubted her. The badge lies near her knee, face up, clear for all to see. She doesn't rush. Doesn't snatch it. She lifts it slowly, purposefully, and places it gently back in her bag. The store remains still, but the stillness is laced with discomfort. Not from guilt. From disbelief. From resentment that the narrative has slipped out of their hands. The manager watches her with narrowed eyes. There's no gratitude that she stayed calm. No curiosity about who she is. Only a growing irritation, that she's still composed, that she still refuses to cower. And so, he digs deeper. He leans forward slightly, sneering, his voice laced with mockery. "What is it?" he says. "You cut off your fingers to make hiding things easier. It's not just offensive, it's cruel. Designed to wound, to turn her injury into something suspicious. Something shameful. A final jab to remind her, in his mind, that no badge or photo can erase what he's already decided about her." For a beat, the room holds its breath. Then, from the snack aisle, someone lets out a snort. A teenager, barely old enough to know better, raises his hand and flips her off with a grin, as if it's all some twisted game. As if her pain is a joke. But she doesn't react. She doesn't rise to the bait. She simply stands, slow and steady, her posture straight, her eyes unwavering. She looks directly at the manager. Then at the boy. Then at everyone else watching, those who stayed silent, those who whispered, those who judged. And then, she speaks. Calm. Clear. "You're making a big mistake." The words are simple. But they carry weight. Not because she raises her voice. But because she doesn't need to. Everyone hears them anyway. The manager's face twitches. He's losing grip, not just on the moment, but on the version of the story he was trying to control. He snaps, stepping back, voice sharp. "Call the police." Now. The words slice through the room like a gavel. Some shift their weight, others pull out their phones, expecting drama. Thinking it's almost over. But what they don't know, what none of them realize yet, is that the real story hasn't even begun. And the mistake they've made is bigger than any of them can imagine. The room feels as if it's holding its breath. Every second stretches longer than the last. People stare, phones in hand, thoughts behind their eyes. But she doesn't move. Doesn't tremble. She looks at the manager, the man standing firm, waiting for her to break, and says softly, "I'll wait." 3 words, spoken with clarity. Not defiance. Not submission. Just certainty. She knows what she's done. More importantly, she knows what she hasn't. And that's enough for her to stand still, even when the world insists she should fall. Not everyone shares her stillness. From the far side of the counter, a young employee glances around. He lifts his phone just slightly, angling it low, pretending to check messages. But the camera's already recording. He whispers, amused, "Can't wait to see her get arrested." He doesn't see pain. He doesn't see history. He sees a moment worth posting. A bit of drama. Something to pass around in group chats. His words aren't loud. But they carry. And they find the wrong ears. Near the snacks, an elderly woman, quiet since the beginning, shifts her purse higher on her arm. Her eyes, cloudy but observant, settle on him for a moment. Then on the woman at the center of it all. She leans closer to a man beside her and murmurs, "Just because she's black, she deserves this." It isn't a protest. It's a question. A quiet, painful truth laid bare in 6 words. Words that hang heavier than any accusation shouted minutes ago. Some nearby hear her. And though they say nothing, their expressions falter. The woman at the counter hears too. She doesn't turn, doesn't smile. But there's something in her eyes, a flicker of something softer. Not gratitude. Something deeper. Recognition. She reaches forward and places the bottle of water back on the counter. Her movements are slow. Intentional. She doesn't slam it down. She doesn't make a scene. She simply rests it there, her hand still for a second longer than needed. Her voice cuts through the silence, gentle and firm. "I haven't touched it. I haven't left the store. So that's stealing." No one answers. Because the question isn't for them to answer. It's for them to feel. To reckon with. But the manager doesn't feel it. Or refuses to. His ego clings to the idea that authority means he's right. That volume equals power. He steps forward, eyes narrowed, chest lifted slightly. "You don't get to talk here," he growls. It isn't about policy. It's about silence. About control. He wants her quiet. Wants her erased. Wants her small enough to fit the version of her he already decided on. But she doesn't look away. Doesn't shrink. She just stands there, saying nothing now, but saying everything in how she holds her ground. And in that stillness, the room begins to shift. The room, though crowded, feels like it only holds 2 people now, her, and the manager. The noise, the whispers, the cameras, the tension, all blur into the background. Their eyes meet. Neither looks away. Her gaze is calm, but unyielding. There's no hate in it. No panic. Just truth. And when she finally speaks, her voice is soft, but cuts through the silence with precision. "You really don't know who I am." It's not a threat. Not a boast. It's a reminder. One that comes too late for him. The manager scoffs, a quick exhale of disbelief. But his laugh lacks the confidence it had minutes ago. Still, he forces a smirk and says loud enough for everyone to hear, "Some poor black woman? Please." The words land heavy. Not just on her. On everyone. On the customers still pretending to browse. On the employees watching from behind shelves. On the young man with the phone still recording. They all hear it. And they all remember it. Before anyone can respond, the front door swings open. Two police officers step into the store, calm but alert. Their hands hover near their belts, not on their weapons, but close enough to keep the room quiet. They scan the room quickly and approach her. One officer speaks gently. His tone measured. Professional. Ma'am, we need to see some identification. She doesn't speak. Doesn't protest. She nods once, then slowly reaches into her bag. Her movements are deliberate, open, careful. She knows how easily they could be misread. She pulls out her ID and hands it over. The officer takes it. Examines the photo. Reads the name. Then flips the badge attached. There's a pause. A shift. He looks again. The seal. The signature. The title. His brow furrows slightly. Then lifts. He murmurs, more to himself than anyone else, hold on. This is, the words trail off. But the change in his tone is unmistakable. Something's not right. Or rather, something's not wrong, like they all expected. But before the officer can finish his sentence, the manager cuts in, loud and sharp, fake ID, arrest her. His voice cracks this time. Not from anger. From desperation. He sees it. Sees the moment slipping away. The story he built unraveling. He wants control back. Wants to silence the truth before it has a chance to stand. But the officer doesn't react. He doesn't move to cuff her. Doesn't call for backup. He just looks at her. Then back at the ID. Then at the manager. The store is silent again, but it's no longer the silence of suspicion. It's something different now. Something closer to realization. And in that moment, for the first time, the weight of her presence shifts. No longer the woman they assumed her to be. Now, a question hangs in the air, unspoken but loud: who is she? And more importantly, what have they just done? The officer holds the ID in his hand a moment longer, turning it under the light. Every detail checks out: the name, the photo, the official seal, the regional security insignia at the corner. His eyes scan the barcode, then glance at the matching employee code etched into the security badge. His expression shifts, slowly but clearly. From suspicion, to understanding, to something close to disbelief. He steps back, just enough to create space. His tone changes. It's no longer the tone reserved for questioning. It's the tone used when giving respect. He clears his throat, voice low but firm. She's not just an employee. She's the head of regional security. There's a beat of stunned silence. Then he adds, as if to ensure no one in the store misses the weight of that title, for the entire chain. The words hang in the air like a dropped stone. You can almost hear them hit the floor. Someone near the snacks gasps quietly. The woman at the magazine stand covers her mouth. The teenage boy lowers his phone all the way this time, and quietly locks the screen. All around, people begin to shift, not just physically, but emotionally. She's no longer the stranger they judged. Now, she's someone they've wronged. The officer continues, this time glancing toward the employees near the counter. His voice carries a quiet authority. She was sent here on a special assignment. A covert inspection. To investigate bias-based profiling at store level. The irony is sharp. The very thing she came to uncover has played out perfectly, and publicly. They handed her the evidence without even realizing it. Then, softer now, the officer adds one final detail. One that changes the silence into something deeper. She lost 3 fingers. During a chase with a thief. At one of your stores. The room is still. There's no applause. No excuses. Only the echo of everything that's just been revealed. The assumptions. The insults. The judgment. Every act exposed for what it was. She says nothing yet. Not because she lacks the words. But because the truth has already spoken for her. Her gaze shifts. Slowly. She turns toward the manager. He doesn't speak. His lips are pressed tight. His arms, once confidently crossed, now hang limply at his sides. He looks at her, but can't seem to hold her eyes. And still, she doesn't raise her voice. She just looks at him, firm and steady, and says with quiet force, "You judged. And you were wrong." No anger. No drama. Just 5 words, measured, calm, controlled. But the power behind them is unmistakable. In those few seconds, she reclaims every part of the moment that was stolen from her. Not with rage, but with truth. Not by shouting, but by standing. And for the first time, the store feels quiet for a reason they all understand. The truth now hangs in the air, undeniable and weighty. The badge has spoken. The title confirmed. The story they all thought they knew has unraveled, and the man at the center of it, the one who led the accusation, suddenly has nothing to hold onto. The manager takes a step back. His shoulders are no longer square. His hands, once firm and commanding, now tremble slightly at his sides. He opens his mouth, tries to find something to say, but the words catch in his throat. Finally, they come out, stuttered, clumsy, thin. I didn't know. I didn't mean to." He looks at her as if that should matter. As if ignorance excuses harm. As if not meaning to wound makes the wound disappear. But she doesn't look at him with sympathy. She doesn't nod. She doesn't give him the comfort of pretending that not knowing is enough. She takes a breath, her chin lifted, her voice low but firm. "That's why you messed up. You messed with the wrong one." The sentence doesn't need volume. It cuts through the room with clarity. It carries the weight of every time someone like her was judged before being known. Dismissed before being heard. And with those words, the store goes still. No whispers. No shifting feet. Not even the sound of phones recording. Just silence. Everyone is watching now, but not like before. This isn't curiosity. It's realization. They're no longer watching the woman they assumed was a thief. They're watching the woman who saw through them all. Who stood in truth while they sank in assumption. The police officers exchange a look. Then one of them gently nods to her, a gesture of respect, before turning to the manager. His voice is calm but direct. "Sir, we need to ask you some questions." The manager blinks. Confused. Caught. What? Me. But there's no space left for denial. The officer steps closer, notebook in hand, pen ready. The other begins recording statements. The manager tries again. His voice smaller now. "This is all just a misunderstanding," but no one answers. Not even the people who once stood behind him. They've seen too much. They've heard too much. In the center of it all, she doesn't move. Doesn't smile. Doesn't gloat. She stands exactly where she's been from the beginning. Still. Composed. Grounded. The camera lingers on her face. There's no triumph in her eyes. No joy in being right. Just a quiet steadiness. The strength of someone who didn't need to prove herself, but did anyway. Her face holds no bitterness. Only clarity. And in that moment, the room finally sees her for who she's always been. Not just a woman with colored skin. Not just a body misunderstood. But someone with power. With control. With a kind of dignity no one in that store could touch. She doesn't say another word. She doesn't have to. She's already said enough. By the time the store has settled into a tense quiet, headlights flash across the parking lot. Sleek black cars stop just beyond the entrance. Their doors open in unison, and figures in crisp suits step out, purposeful, unsmiling. These are corporate directors, sent not just to assess, but to act. They walk through the automatic doors without delay. No greetings. No hesitation. Their presence alone silences the last whispers in the room. Even those who hadn't been paying attention now know, something serious is unfolding. The manager stiffens as they approach. He tries to explain. Stumbles through a few words about a misunderstanding, about just following protocol. But his voice cracks, and the excuses sound weak even to his own ears. The lead director doesn't flinch. She speaks only once. Calm, clear, and final. You're suspended. Effective immediately. There are no discussions. No warnings. He isn't escorted out, not yet, but he's told to leave the front. Told to stay away from customers. Told that an internal investigation is underway, and he is at the center of it. The room is still. Everyone hears it. No one says a word. Then attention shifts to the younger employee, the one who whispered, the one who smirked, the one who filmed the moment like a spectacle. He looks away as the director calls his name. He's told that his comments, captured on video, are being reviewed. That his behavior is being evaluated. That the company doesn't tolerate profiling, verbal bias, or humiliation, not even in the shadows. He nods silently. His earlier confidence is gone. And while all this unfolds inside, the world outside is waking up to the same truth. The video, secretly filmed and quickly uploaded, has gone viral. It's been reposted, reshared, dissected. The footage is shaky, the audio fuzzy, but the story is unmistakable. A woman wrongly accused. Humiliated. And then revealed to be the very authority figure they thought they could silence. The public reacts with fury. Social media fills with comments, disbelief, heartbreak, anger. People demand accountability. Others share their own stories of being watched, followed, questioned for nothing more than the color of their skin. Some write, "She stayed calm. We wouldn't have." Others say, "This is why people don't trust systems anymore." Her name trends for a moment, but she doesn't respond. As interview requests pile up, as talk shows reach out, as headlines multiply, she does something unexpected. She stays silent. No press conference. No statement. No cameras. She turns them all down. Because for her, the message has already been spoken. In how she stood. In how she didn't break. In how she let the truth rise while everyone else tried to bury it. She doesn't need to explain what they all saw. And in a world addicted to noise, her silence speaks louder than anything else. The days move on. News coverage fades, headlines shift, and the world, as it often does, turns its attention elsewhere. But for this store, and the people inside it, nothing is quite the same. Weeks later, she returns. Not as a symbol. Not as a story. But as a professional. She's there for a scheduled follow-up, part of the company's internal reform. She walks through the same glass doors, the same aisles, but the energy has changed. There's no tension this time. No eyes tracking her every move. No quiet judgment waiting to erupt. The moment she enters, the staff take notice. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. This time, when they look at her, they don't see a suspect. They see someone who stood still when they all looked away. One by one, they lower their heads as she passes. Some offer a nod. Others simply stand quietly, hands folded in front. There are no grand gestures. But there is something new. Something long overdue. Respect. She doesn't pause. Doesn't linger. She moves through the store like she always has, with calm steps, quiet eyes, and the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. She takes note of new procedures. Updated signage. Retrained staff. Small signs of change, slowly taking root. Near the front, a mother and her daughter are waiting in line. The little girl, no more than 8, peers up from beneath her hoodie. She watches the woman walk past, eyes wide and curious. Then, without thinking, she speaks. "You're so strong." The voice is soft, but clear. The woman stops and turns. For a moment, her expression softens. She kneels down, not all the way, just enough to meet the girl's eyes. Then she reaches out with her right hand, the one that bears the story. The hand with 3 fingers gone, shaped by pain, carried with pride. She places it gently on the girl's head. Her touch is light, but steady. "Strength isn't in your fingers," she says, voice warm, steady, sure. "It's in your heart." The girl nods slowly. Something passes between them, something that doesn't need to be explained. As the woman stands, her eyes catch something by the door. A new sign, freshly printed, mounted in the light. Simple, bold, direct. "We respect differences, everyone is equal here." She looks at it for a brief moment. Doesn't smile. Doesn't nod. Just takes it in. Not as a gesture for her, but as a promise for whoever comes next. Then she walks out. Quietly. Just as she came in. And this time, every head follows her. Not with suspicion. But with something much harder to earn. Respect. It's a quiet afternoon. The store moves with a gentle rhythm, customers come and go, staff work with more care than before. The energy is calmer now, more human. But just outside the large front window, someone stands still. The former manager. He's no longer in uniform. No badge. No clipboard. Just an ordinary coat, wrinkled at the sleeves. He stands alone on the sidewalk, half hidden behind a post. His shoulders slump slightly. His eyes don't scan the store like they used to. They stay fixed on one person. She's near the front, wrapping up her final notes from the follow-up. She hasn't looked his way once, not out of avoidance, but because she doesn't need to. But then, as she turns toward the exit, she senses him. She lifts her eyes, and they meet. He doesn't wave. Doesn't speak. He simply stares, his face a blend of shame and something heavier, something closer to regret. She pauses. Not long. Just enough. And then she nods. Once. Quiet. Measured. A gesture that isn't warm, but isn't cold either. It says, "I see you. I've moved forward. But I haven't forgotten." He lowers his gaze. He knows she doesn't owe him more than that. Inside, one of the newer employees has been watching. Young, fresh to the job, he's heard the stories, seen the video, read the headlines. But seeing her in person, calm, focused, untouched by bitterness, leaves him with questions. As she passes, he speaks, gently but curiously. "Why didn't you sue them?" She stops. Turns slightly to face him. There's no offense in her eyes. Only thoughtfulness. Her voice, when it comes, is soft but certain. The deepest lessons are the ones that change people forever. He doesn't respond. Just listens. She waits a moment, then continues. "Suing might have brought punishment," she says, "but regret forces people to live with what they've done. It makes them look in the mirror every day and remember." Her words aren't harsh. They're true. She's not excusing what happened. But she's chosen a different kind of justice. She glances again toward the front window, where the former manager still stands, no longer the man with authority, just a man with the weight of his own choices. Then she looks back at the employee and adds, "Regret doesn't pay the price. It leads to change." He nods slowly, unsure of what to say. But something in his face shifts, a deeper understanding, a kind of quiet respect. She doesn't linger. Doesn't wait for admiration. She walks to the door, pushes it open, and steps into the sunlight. The former manager steps aside as she passes. Not out of fear. Out of knowing. And as the door closes behind her, the store feels quieter than before. Not because she's gone. But because of what she left behind, the reminder that justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just walks away with dignity. We don't get to choose the skin we're born in. That choice was never ours. But how we see others, how we treat people whose skin looks different from ours, that is a choice. And it's one we make, every single day. She entered that store quietly. No demands. No noise. No reason for anyone to fear her, or follow her, or question her worth. But they did. Not because of what she said. Not because of what she did. But because of what she looked like. They didn't see her title. They didn't see her story. They didn't see her pain, or her strength, or the battles she had already fought long before she walked through that door. All they saw was a black woman with missing fingers. And that was enough for them to assume the worst. But she never raised her voice. Never lashed out. Never begged to be believed. She stood with stillness, not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to let the truth speak for itself. And when it did, it shook the room. She was not just a woman. She was a lesson. She showed them, and all of us, that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it is quiet. Sometimes, it doesn't come in the form of anger or revenge. Sometimes, it's a single nod. A steady gaze. A soft voice that refuses to break under pressure. She reminded them that respect is not earned after credentials are revealed. Respect is a starting point. It's what we offer one another before judgment. Before bias. Before it's too late to undo the damage. She didn't need a spotlight. She didn't need revenge. What she needed, and what she chose, was dignity, grace, and clarity. So let this be a reminder. The next time you catch yourself making assumptions. The next time you look at someone and decide who they are before they speak. Pause. Because you don't know their story. You don't know what they've overcome. You don't know who they are, not really. And sometimes, the person you judge in passing might be the very one sent to reveal your blind spot. We can't change the color of our skin. But we can change how we see. We can choose awareness. We can choose to look closer, listen deeper, and respect without condition. Because quiet strength will always speak louder than accusation. And those who carry pain with dignity carry the power to transform every room they enter. So if this story moved you, share it. Let it live beyond this screen. Leave a comment. Reflect. Speak to someone about it. And don't forget to subscribe to Black Excellence, where we tell stories that speak not just to the world we see, but to the better world we're all capable of building.